Welcome to this. This is a hustings for some of the candidates for the NEC Youth Rep on the Labour Party's National Executive Committee. We've got 5 candidates in at the moment. So we've got 22 questions, and the rules are that each candidate will have 45 seconds to answer each question, and then we'll move on to the next one. So, is everybody ready?
Yeah.
Right, well, we'll start, and the order we're going in is, I think it's Theo. Sorry, someone remind me what order we're going in, Clark, please. Can I decide the order? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Right, we're going to go, just because it's the way it's set up on my screen, we're going to go Theo, Tommy, Leighton, Josh, Gurpreet. Okay, so fingers on buzzers. First question, 45 seconds for Theo on this one. What's the point in half of you running when you have no chance of being elected? May as well all drop out and coalesce around one candidate. Theo, your 45 seconds begins now.
Well, first of all, no election is ever unwinnable. Some of you might know in 1997 of the Portello moment of a 17.4% swing, or perhaps winning in Canterbury in 2017. Second of all, I'm not just standing to win. I'm trying to stand to unite the party, to get people to change their views on certain issues. So if I get through to just one person, I'll consider that a success.
Okay, thank you very much. Tommy, you are next. Your 45 seconds begins now.
Hi, so I have actually previously answered this question, so I'm just going to read out my response to that first time and add something else to it. So I'm running to make socialist change in our party. Sometimes it isn't the front runners that win the elections, as we saw in the 2015 leadership elections. And also we have some remarkable candidates who are running as well. The forerunners at the moment, you can't predict forerunners before the actual ballot happens, are Kira and Lara. So a lot of them are seen as
time, please. That's 45 seconds, thank you. Leighton, your turn. Your 45 seconds begins now.
To be honest with you, I know it may be seen as a 2-horse race, but I wouldn't be running if I didn't feel I had something different to say than the other two people. I think a lot of the other candidates have got a lot of great things to say. I just feel like I could add something different to what they say. I'm from an arts background. I feel like there's not a predominant arts voice. You know, I've lived life in a rural area and also in a city, so I know the difference between both. So I can represent both sort of views. I feel that it's not democratic just to say, well, you know, there's 2 front runners, so you know, might as well just rally behind them. No, you've got to give everyone an option on that.
Thank you very much. Josh, are you ready? Your 45 seconds begins now.
No election just has, 2 candidates. I want to make strong, effective, clear, progressive change. And you know what? Young members always want something different. No one always goes for the front runners. We are all running positively as candidates. We're all fighting to make a difference in this election. That's what it's about. It's not about winning.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. And Gurpreet, your 45 seconds begins now.
It's not about winning. The reason why I'm running it's because I want to share what my opinions are, what change I want to see as a young person in the party, and whether it's about 2 people or 3 people, you can't predict the end. You don't know what's going to happen, and regardless, let's say don't win, but at least I've put myself out there as a candidate. At least people know what I think of the party, what state the party is in, and what change I want to bring. So it's about offering yourself up and just trying to let people know what your perspective is.
Okay, thank you. So, second question. Second question is, the Labour Party has a problem with anti-Semitism. What are you going to do about it? So again, we'll go to Theo first for this one. And Theo, your 45 seconds begins now.
Well, I think first of all, we need to set up a independent complaints system to seriously look into this, as I felt that is partly why people felt the party had some problems with anti-Semitism. Personally, I would try and reach out to Jewish members, to the Jewish community across the UK, to actually talk to them, to open a constructive dialogue and to ask, what do you think we should be doing? What do you think needs to change?
Thank you very much. Tommy, your 45 seconds begins now.
Hiya, so the way I would deal with it is I would back a system that is currently being debated in the courts via a few Jewish members, which is more open and independent complaint system. I also think we need a robust change to the complaint system as a whole, as it's not working. Also, I want a defined answer to what being anti-Semitic is, as the current definition does not cut what it is kind of in depth. It could be associated with anything.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Leighton, your 45 seconds begins now.
I would also back an independent complaint system. I think that's the key to making sure that it's dealt with thoroughly. I would encourage any Jewish members to feel that they could come to me or to any representative to talk and feel that they've got an open dialogue with us. I want them to always feel that their voice is prominent, just as prominent as everyone else's. And also, but yeah, just making sure that their voices are heard, and yeah, and also an education of what anti-Semitism is as well. That's a really big important thing. A lot of people don't realise they're being anti-Semitic, but what they're saying is actually incredibly awful. I think that's important. Education is key.
Okay, thank you. Josh, your 45 seconds on this question begins now.
We need a stronger complaint system, that's for sure, where that gets dealt with a lot quickly. And I would also push to keep the policy of Holocaust education in schools, so that not only does it not happen in the Labour Party again, it doesn't happen in our society again. Because you know what, we should be championing equality and diversity and calling anti-Semitism, any types of discrimination or racism out when we see it.
Thank you. And Gurpreet, your 45 seconds begins now.
Like Theo and many of the others said, I'll definitely back an independent inquiry committee into this. There was an inquiry carried out in 2016 which reported that, yes, there is a toxic atmosphere in the party, even though the party's not overrun. But, there were recommendations made which weren't implemented, which haven't been implemented. So I would work on getting those implemented and working with Jewish communities on how we can further improve. And there needs to be a rigorous process for complaints and such, so that matters are dealt with quickly, effectively, and as seriously as possible.
Thank you very much. Okay, the third question. How would you work with the NEC and leadership to give young people a voice and get their voice heard? And how will you make young Labour politics kinder and safer for everyone? Theo, your 45 seconds on this question begins now.
Well, I think to actually make everyone feel safer and more welcome, I try and organise better communication, better dialogue between all parts and stages of the party, as young people often feel excluded or just ignored. I would also try and get in good partnership with fellow members of the NEC if elected, also try and open good communication with the leadership so I can actually apply pressure as well as constructive dialogue.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Tommy, your 45 seconds begins now.
So, as a few of you will know, I'm a major activist in Salford and Greater Manchester over children's rights. I'm also a young leader on the Child Fair State project, which is a project that is making the welfare state more accommodative to children and young people and campaigning for some changes on it. I think that we can get young people's voices heard on the NEC in coalition with the Young Labour Executive Committee, but also by electing one of the youngest candidates on the NEC rep thing, which is me. I'm one of the youngest candidates who is running in this race, but I also think that it would be great if we actually voiced our concerns with the Young Labour Executive Committee as well.
Okay, thank you. Leighton, your 45 seconds begins now.
Another one of the key things that we need to do is to reach out, particularly to rural communities as well. A lot of their voices feel like they're not being heard. It's harder to reach out to rural communities. A lot of political activism comes from being in university and in cities and stuff. Getting out there and reaching it. But if we reach out to rural communities, we can really hear a lot more diverse opinions of what's going on. It's the key to making sure that young people's voices is heard. I think is reaching out to all sides, creating an open dialogue between cities, rural communities, and making sure that they have a voice. I think that's really vital to making sure that then we can express those views to the NEC and the leadership if we've got everybody's viewpoint across.
Thank you very much. And Josh, your 45 seconds begins now.
So I'm going to fight for young members' voices to be heard. I want to meet with as many young Labour groups as fast as possible so that we can get an action plan and more direct dialogue with the youth rep on Labour's NEC and between young members. And I also want, especially in marginal seats, to have regular meetings between neighbouring youth officers so that we can work together and make youth voice stronger, because believe it or not, we are stronger together when we fight together.
Okay, thank you. And Gurpreet, your 45 seconds begins now.
I think it's important in each CLP for there to be a youth officer to listen to that person, listen to what concerns of our young people are, and then voicing those to the leadership. And also, I think in the party itself, there's a huge lack of communication, and there's need to be a central platform, like a forum of some kind, where young people can get together, voice their opinions, their concerns, which can then be taken up to the leadership. So here are the problems young people are facing, and just educating and just general awareness into the issues that are happening across the party for young people.
Okay, thank you. Right, so the fourth question is, what's your favourite aspect of socialism? Theo, you get your 45 seconds start now.
I think that's quite a tough question to try and say just one thing. But I think the fact that it's trying to help and be open to everyone. Because I think when we help everyone, when we stay and come together united, that's how our society progresses, that's how our country moves forward as well, and that's how everyone ends up healthy, happy, and safe. So I think that's my favourite thing.
Thank you. Tommy, your 45 seconds begins now.
My favourite aspect of socialism probably would be the aspect of community and also workers' rights, because without guaranteeing our workers' rights, we can't actually form great policies and great things. We also need to fight for a living wage at the moment, which would be an amazing win for workers. And without workers, we can push for positive socialist change.
Okay, thank you. Leighton, your 45 seconds begins now.
I do think that the core of socialism is the idea of looking after those who need it and making sure that there's a base for everybody so that they can then work and better themselves. I'm a big fan of public ownership as well. That's quite a big aspect of socialism. I love the idea of public ownership and making things a lot more efficient than they are, particularly rail. That would benefit young people if rail was made a lot more affordable. I know that's not really that's more of a specific policy rather than a point of socialism, but that's an aspect that I love. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you. Josh, your 45 seconds begins now.
So, taxing the rich, having that wealth tax in place so that we can invest in the next generation in this country, public ownership and treating healthcare as human rights, and having workers' rights. That is some fantastic aspects of socialism. I couldn't pick just one because all of them are fantastic parts.
Okay. And Gurpreet, your 45 seconds begins now.
I think my favourite part of socialism is the sense of community and unity, standing together with one another on an equal system that treats everybody the same, that gives everybody equal opportunities, everybody equal career opportunities, as well as the education, healthcare. That's all equal for everyone, regardless of race, religion, sex, ethnic background. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The fifth question is, what will you do to make sure Labour remains a party that is fully committed to socialism? Theo, your 45 seconds on this begins now.
Well, I mean, first of all, I'll always do my best to actually hold the current leadership and any future leadership to account to make sure we are still fighting and campaigning for our socialist policies. Luckily, I've had many meetings with young members and different societies across the country, and they all agree that they want to keep the socialist policies of the last manifesto as well. So I think trying to hold the leadership to account and open constructive dialogue with all members to see what socialist policies we need to fight for.
Okay, thank you. Tommy, your 45 seconds begins now.
I think the party should stay committed to socialism by introducing, for one, a wealth tax to tax the rich and fund public services. The party is already majoritarily committed to socialism, but I don't think we should be advocating for the capitalist policies because capitalist policies harm the people, and I think we need a strong militant opposition when we're in the opposition of the House. And we need our people to continue fighting for the positive socialist change that the party has put in place.
Thank you. Leighton, your 45 seconds begins now.
First of all, making sure that the leadership sticks to his pledges, the pledges such as the tax and the student fees. Also, to remind everyone to take out the membership card and look on the back where it says we are a democratic socialist party. We are, Labour to its core is a socialist party. So I think to even consider scrapping it would be kind of existential for the party, I think.
Okay, thank you. Josh, your 45 seconds begins now.
So I'm going to tell it how it is. Socialist and progressive policies are popular policies with the British public. So we need to stick with the popular policies. We need to stick with Labour's identity. But what we also need to do is be there for our communities. Because I'll tell you what, that is going to be the biggest thing in the next few years, post-COVID, post-Brexit, being there for our communities and delivering the policies needed to totally transform this country in a way that can't be undone, in a way that provides equal paths to opportunity for everybody and such a better life for everyone.
Thank you. And Gurpreet, your 45 seconds begins now.
I think the most important aspect for us as a party is, like Josh said, it's community. And that sense of community, we are a party of the people in that sense, and we need to support our communities as well as national issues, as well as issues within our party. We need to look to local communities, ask them what problems they're facing, what their concerns are, and then, helping to fix those problems, those issues, getting those issues to the government or the leadership, and just supporting our communities, our young people, and just focusing on the local picture of things.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is, over the past decade, we have seen massive cuts to mental health services for young people. And with the current difficulty, waiting lists and inadequate support that young people are facing while dealing with CAMHS, what is your position on what Labour could and should do next? And perhaps what kind of policy the party could look at for the next manifesto to ensure that young people receive the support they need? Theo, your 45 seconds begins now.
Well, I think, first of all, one of the main things, however unfruitful it might be, is trying to persuade the government to take care of the mental health services, to invest in it. Putting that aside, We need to also be campaigning and putting in our manifesto huge investment into our mental health services, especially for young people. We need to look at more and enhanced training for members of staff in schools and colleges and universities to help and recognise mental health issues in young people. I think that's the main thing we need to look towards.
Thank you. Tommy, your 45 seconds begins now.
As an ex-CAMS user, I understand the pressure that's been put on CAMS. They're statistically underfunded. Once a psychologist leaves, they want to discharge all the young people underneath them, which happened to me. And also there's numerous other things that CAMS has done, which could be changed. We need to fully fund not just CAMS, but our whole NHS service. We need to support our NGOs that also have a say in mental health services, like 42nd Street in Greater Manchester and mine up and down the country. And I think if we do achieve this, it would be the best possible thing that the Labour Party could do for young people, but also for adults and loads of other people who use the NHS and mental health services every day.
Thank you. Leighton, your 45 seconds begins now.
Investment in of mental health services is obviously key. Also, something that people don't really seem to make the connection with: social media as well, policies on social media. I know a lot of young people who are affected by what they see on social media, whether it be towards them or towards others, that affect the way they think and the way they feel. I think maybe policies on protections on social media for young people will actually be really vital to keeping their mental health secure. And obviously, like I said, investment in the services is key because they are just, and the waiting times are ridiculous at the moment. It's very hard to get onto it at the moment, especially now during lockdown. It's highlighted a challenge that we need for mental health to be sorted.
Okay, thank you. Josh, your 45 seconds begins now.
One of the first things that we do is kick privatisation out of our National Health Service. We need to fund the NHS as a whole properly. And what we need to be doing right now is creating this big movement, getting out there, fighting for proper funding for mental health, because that is the way forward. We will win when we fight together, because we're stronger together. We've seen with the A-level fiasco, we all came together, we all took on the DfE, we all took on this government, we won. We need to do that for mental health, and we need to do it right now. We can't wait. This needs to happen now.
Thank you. And Gurpreet, your 45 seconds begins now.
As someone who's suffered from PTSD, and thanks to mental health services such as CAMS, I strongly believe that young people should be supported throughout. And I believe that once a young person hits 18, mental health services should not be discontinued, because mental health issues don't discriminate. They don't care if you're about your age, your race, your ethnic background. So we should support our young people in schools, and also have representatives and trained representatives in communities, so young people can reach out comfortably if they need support.
Thank you. Right, the next question, this is our 7th question. Considering it is our generation that will be affected most by the recession, how will you centre the discussion of jobs towards providing opportunities for us? And Theo, your 45 seconds begins now.
Well, luckily I've been having various calls with the Co-opted Party, the Shadow Chancellor, Labour Business on this. Obviously, as someone that took 5 tries to get a C in GCSE maths, I'm not going to pretend I'm a mathematical genius. So I think the main thing would actually be a big discussion and consultation on this, because if we make a mistake in this is going to affect so many young people, affect an entire generation. And I think also to actually apply pressure on the NEC and the party to focus on this.
Thank you. Tommy, your 45 seconds begins now.
One of the things that I want to say first is a recession is bad for everyone, but young people are going to be most affected. We've seen the younger people get the sack first. We've seen younger people not get hired. We've seen young people not get stuff in. The fact is, we live in an ageist society when it comes with young people starting in new jobs. We need to get young people guaranteed jobs out there. We need to guarantee young people workers' rights, and we need to make sure that young people aren't hit the hardest by this recession, because it's the young people who are our future. Young people who can't find jobs are at the forefront of our society at the moment, and we need to fight for them to be able to get and receive jobs.
Thank you. Leighton, your 45 seconds begins now.
Someone's just graduating university. I'm seeing a lot of my fellow graduates really struggle to get employment. Some of them having to move back home. Some of them having to consider, taking employment that doesn't really suit them or that they find quite uncomfortable to take because they're desperate. It is a crisis that is going on already. So I think that it would. I'm not an economic expert. I'm not going to stand here and say to you, I have a strategy on how we can sort this. But it's just about coming together and like Theo was just saying, coming together and making sure that this is really well thought out and we plan for this. Like I said, I'm no economic expert, but I think as long as young people get their opinions heard, that's a really important factor to me.
Thank you. Josh, your 45 seconds begins now.
Yeah, so I just want to make this clear. It's not just a recession that's going to affect everyone, but mainly young people. It's the climate crisis as well. So when we're talking about jobs, we need to get out there and fight for green jobs to save our climate. I agree with my fellow candidate, Leighton. We've not got a strategy for how we get out of this recession. We need to work collectively together in the Labour Party to get that strategy together, go to our communities and work together and fight together and look after each other, because we're going to get through this recession. But we need to make sure that the jobs that we're going to get are green jobs so that we can tackle climate change and save this planet.
Thank you. Gurpreet, your 45 seconds begins now.
So I think post-COVID, there's going to be massive difficulty, especially for young people who've come out of education, who want to find jobs, who want to go down a different career path rather than go to uni. And, seeing that our national debt has reached 2 trillion for the first time, it's absolutely mind-boggling. And I think we need to campaign to the government that there's more career options available for young people. There's workers' rights are maintained throughout, and young people are supported once they come out of education to find what they're looking for, find the correct job that is fair and what they want.
Thank you. So our next question, how are you going to prevent youth disengagement similar to the kind we saw before Corbyn's leadership win in 2015? Theo, your 45 seconds begins now.
Well, I think, first of all, we actually need to work on the bullying and toxicity in the party, as many young people, unfortunately, just didn't feel welcome or felt like staying in the party. I also think we need to focus on better communication between youth officers and young people across the party. Mm-hmm. We also need to give better training and advice to young members, as often in 2015 it was like, oh, just go out and campaign, go on your own. So I think trying to make the party feel safer, better communication and training for young members.
Thank you. Tommy, your 45 seconds begins now.
Youth disengagement is probably one of the biggest issues at the moment. A lot of young members didn't vote for Care. A lot of them voted for representatives like Lisa Nandy and Rebecca Long-Bailey. Youth disengagement is a huge issue because our party is basically the young people's party as well. There's not many policies that the Conservatives come out with that are great for young people, and we also need to fight for young people's rights with speaking about the care that they want, fighting against domestic abuse and fighting against loads of other things, and that is stuff that only the Labour Party can think about as the Socialist Party of the United Kingdom.
Thank you. Leighton, your 45 seconds begins now.
The thing about youth disengagement is that it's unfortunate because leaving the party is actually one of the worst things you can do, because you're taking your unique voice out. If you can keep your unique voice in whether you disagree with what's going on inside the party, it's very common to be disagreeing with your leadership. That's your democratic right to do that. But if you're in the party, your voice can be heard. We need to make sure that everyone feels that their voice can be heard and their voice should be heard. So just making sure that everyone knows they have someone to come to and communicate with, and feel like they can get to the top, rather than feeling like it's the young members and then the parliamentary party. Make them feel like we're all the same.
Thank you. Josh, your 45 seconds begins now.
So can I just thank Jeremy Corbyn for bringing this young people's bonds that we've seen because of his popular social policies that offered change, which, gave young people hope that there was a different future. It's not the same old politics. This is how we're going to keep this bond, by offering change. We're not going to offer anything similar, or we're not going to compromise. We are going to have unshakable values, and us young people are going to fight together for the change that we want to see in this country. And the Labour Party has got to offer that. And if I'm the NEC youth representative, you bet I'll be fighting for this.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Gurpreet, your 45 seconds begins now.
I think the reason for disengagement is that young people feel that they're not being listened to, their voice is not being represented. So in order to ensure that doesn't happen, we need to give them the right tools. Like I said before, there needs to be a central platform where young people from across the nation can get together, share their concerns, share their ideas, and voice their opinions, so they're not left out.
Okay, thank you. We'll do one more question, and then I think we might take a quick break. But this just one more before our break. How highly would you rate Corbyn's leadership out of 10, and why? So, Theo, you get this one first, and 45 seconds begins now.
Well, I think that's a difficult question, as often leadership is different on different points and aspects. But to actually give it a number, I think probably 7, because I think he focused his leadership a lot on talking to young people, which had been ignored for just generations. He also focused more on actual activism, actually helping people go out on the doorstep, campaigning techniques. Personally, I didn't agree with how we were on Europe. I felt like we could have been stronger, but I know that was
that's time,
difficult.
Please. That's time. Thank you. Tommy, your 45 seconds begins now.
So personally, I wasn't a fan of Jeremy Corbyn. I was a fan of his policies, but I wasn't a fan of him. He did do well with young people, and I can say that. He was a good socialist as well. But we need to create policies, and we need to basically make young people the focus of our party at the moment. Young people are the future, and we need to be listening to them more. Statistically, Parliament is 6 years behind the general population, and it's absolutely atrocious. We also need better changes and a better electoral system.
Thank you. Leighton, your 45 seconds begins now.
This is a really difficult question because people are multifaceted and flawed. What do you think of them? Corbyn has become a bit of a deity in a lot of the people that I've met. He's become this figure of moralistic virtue and don't get me wrong, he's done some amazing policies. He's fought for some amazing causes. He's been on the right side of history for a long time sometimes. I just think by the end, after 2017, things just kind of went a bit downhill. So if I was going to have to give him a number, it would probably be a 6. But he was a massive inspiration to me and a massive inspiration to a lot of other people I know. I just think we need to start thinking pragmatically about how people are actually multifaceted and not as perfect as we want them to be.
Thank you. Josh, your 45 seconds begins now.
Jeremy Corbyn was one of the most decent, honest and truthful, members of Parliament we've ever had in the country. And so I would give him a 10 out of 10 for his leadership of this party. And let me just explain why. Because you know what? If the media didn't go after us, and as we are now seeing with this Labour leaked report, we would have been 3 years into a Labour government by now, right? whether anyone likes to confirm or deny that, that is a fact. We would have been 3 years in with Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister. So, and he was savaged by the press. They tore apart his character. It was a shameful thing that we did not get off the sidelines and attack those people that destroyed Mr. Corbyn for no reason other than bringing change to this country.
Thank you. And Gurpreet, last response before we have a quick break. Gurpreet, your 45 seconds begins now.
I think Jeremy Corbyn had some good points in his manifesto. Point about real living wage, bringing that up to £10 an hour for all workers, all across the board, creating a national education board, and ending social crisis. And that affects not only each and every one of us, but specifically young people who are going into work. And I think Jeremy Corbyn did well in regards to his manifesto, but I think in terms of his leadership, he didn't have the full support of the party, as we've seen. So if I were to give him a number, I would say a 6.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick break. I think maybe 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes is a generous break. So we'll see you all back here in 10 or 15 minutes.
To all the doctors, nurses, healthcare assistants and cleaners, to all the paramedics, lab technicians, porters and scientists, to all the volunteers, those who left and returned, to all the protectors risking their lives to protect us, keeping our parents, our children, our siblings safe, to every single person working in the NHS, to all the teachers helping children work from home, to all the refuse collectors, shop workers, delivery drivers, to all the key workers and community volunteers, we say a huge and heartfelt thank you.
Today we're going to find out who's better for the economy, ordinary people or billionaires. So here we have 5 people who all lost money because of cuts and austerity. We're going to give them that money back in the form of a pay rise, pension, disability support, a student grant and a small business loan. And now we're going to go to our billionaire and give him £20,000 in the form of a tax cut. So what are they going to do with their money? Susan has used her money to pay for the family shopping. Tom gets some repairs done on his car. Everyone we gave money to is spending it in the local community. And the people who get that money go on to spend it too.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All this money changing hands creates economic growth. Businesses take in more profits and they can hire more people, and they too go on to spend their wages. With every transaction, the government takes in more revenue, and they can use this to build new roads, hospitals and schools, and they can also hire more teachers, firefighters and police officers. Not only will these people spend the money that they earn, but they'll also make our country a better place to live in, attracting more investments and tourism.
Now let's see what the billionaire has done with his money.
Hi. So, how have you used the extra cash to stimulate the economy?
Pardon?
You know, the £20,000 tax cut we gave you. Have you hired any new staff or invested in local business?
Oh, that money. I completely forgot about it. In fact, I might still have it.
So, what are you going to do with it?
Send it to the Cayman Islands with the rest, I guess.
So you won't mind if we take that back then?
Security?
So as you can see, getting money into the hands of ordinary people does a lot more for the economy than giving tax cuts to billionaires. So if you agree, vote Labour on Thursday the 2nd of May, and let's rebuild Britain for the many and not just the few.
Okay.
Roll sound, roll camera.
Sound running. Speed.
Hello. Now, we are in the run-up to a general election, and over that time, you're going to hear loads of claims from people on the left, on the right, all over the place. It's going to drive you mad. It'll probably drive me mad, but don't switch off yet. You see, because I think in the end, it's simple. It boils down to a choice between a Labour government or a Conservative one. But it isn't just a choice between two different plans, two different ways of getting the deficit down. It's a choice between two completely different sets of values, a choice about what kind of country we want to live in. Now, I don't know about you, but my values are about community, compassion, decency. That's how I was brought up. So, yeah, I could tell you that Tories would take us on a roller coaster of cuts, while Labour will make sure the economy works for all of us, not just the privileged few, like me. But it's not just about that. I could tell you it seems like the Tories don't believe in the NHS, while Labour is passionate about protecting it. Among other examples, guaranteed GP appointments within 48 hours and cancer tests within 1 week. Guaranteed. But it's not even just about that. I could tell you that the Tories have got sod all to offer the young, whereas Labour will invest in the next generation's education and guarantee, that word again, apprenticeships for them. I could tell you that Labour will put the minimum wage up to £8 and ban those horrible 0 hours contracts, while the Tories would presumably do more of their tax cutting for millionaires. But real though all that stuff is, and important though it is if you're young in this country, or broke in this country, or if you're unwell in this country, and let's face it, we all need the NHS at some point, or if you are just plain working hard and finding life tough, there is a choice of two paths. The bottom line is, what values are we choosing? Because in the end, this choice we make really does matter. Labour. They start from the right place. Community, compassion, fairness. I think all the best things about this country. I love this country so much, and I love the people in it, and I think you do too. But really, for me, there's only one choice, and I choose Labour.
This election is a choice between the Tories' failing plan and Labour's better plan for working families. Britain succeeds when working people succeed. Vote Labour on Thursday, May the 7th.
These streets were once full of spirit and hope. A proud community where an honest day's work could earn you a decent day's pay. Years of austerity have ripped the heart out of this place. But that's just part of the story. This has been decades in the making. We lost the factories. We lost the jobs. We lost confidence in our community. We lost control. Once the backbone of this country, we've been sold short by a political and economic system that's been unchallenged for far too long. But change is coming. Labour has a plan to kickstart the economy in all the regions of our country, so that our economy works for everyone. Instead of standing idly by as jobs go overseas, we'll invest in the UK. They do it in other countries, and we'll do it here. Creating good jobs with decent wages, not short-term insecure work, but good jobs for the long term. And when more people are secure in their work, paid fairly and valued, they'll spend more of what they earn locally, and our communities will thrive again. But that's just the start. We want to restore the pride in our towns and bring our high streets and communities back to life. Labour will do that by getting the money to where it's needed, by setting up new regional investment banks whose priority won't be casino-style financial gambling, but investing in local people, local communities and local businesses. And with a national education service, Labour will invest in the next generation. Decent schools, well-paid teachers and smaller classes. We won't sell our kids short. We'll give them the support, the equipment and the confidence they need to flourish. We'll help those struggling to find a home by building 1 million affordable new homes over the next decade, not as investment opportunities for the few, but real homes for the many. We will give control back to local people. Labour will bring back essential services into public ownership. No more rip-off energy and water, expensive and overcrowded trains. We'll get them working in the interests of all of us. Together, we'll rebuild Britain. The time for tinkering at the edges is over. We need real and lasting change. It's going to take a lot of work, but only Labour has the ideas and the determination to take on the challenge. Labour will change our economy so that it works for everyone. Because when you create a fairer society, we all share in the wealth that's created.
Together, we will change this country for the better.
For the many, not the few.
For the many, not the few.
For the many, not the few.
Labour will rebuild Britain. For the many, not the few.
I think my parents, they did have it easier. I weren't so rich growing up as kids, but, you know, they always had money in the pot. We always went on holidays once a year. At the minute, that isn't happening for my family. Me and my wife, we both work, full-time employment. I think with us, your living costs are more expensive, your food's more expensive, petrol in your car's more expensive, but the wages ain't going up. Comes to the end of the month, we've got pennies left in our bank account, not pounds.
My dad was running the shop in the olden days. It was boom time. The road was busy. We used to employ a lot of people here. But now, high business rates are driving people out. We're all hanging on by our teeth, basically. A lot of the shops, we're 2 months, 3 months, 4 months out of going out of business, a lot of us.
You go to university, you think you're going to have all these opportunities, but actually we're not able to afford houses. We're not able to pay our debts off, pay our student loans off. How on earth are you ever going to reach your full potential if actually you're just laden with all this debt? And then you've got to try and be strong for the children.
It is difficult with us both working full time. We're working weekends as well, so A, we don't have time to do anything. We don't have time to sort of go out on weekends away or anything like that because we have to work. And B, anything that we do earn instantly goes on bills.
And you've got no definite idea of how many hours a week you're going to work or if that's going to change. And then you're back seeking unemployment benefit with a young child. If my daughter was ill or if I had to take time off ill, I'd know that there's no way I can afford that.
Round here, there were some well-paid jobs. Now it's working in warehouses, low earnings, 0-hour contracts, and we've seen the local town centre really going to decline, shops closing, and ordinary people queuing to get tins of food. This is Britain. This is Britain under the Tories, and they have to depend on charities to feed children.
I put pride in my job and I always want to provide for my children and found it quite degrading really to have to look for food bank because it's not kind of the way I've been brought up. I'm more of a person that would give to the food bank rather than want to receive things or ask for help.
It's not a myth. I know people in the police service, I know nurses, I know teachers who are using food banks. And the people I see are people who don't want to be there. How can you be working full-time and not be able to afford to meet your basic needs? In a country this rich, that shouldn't be happening.
People work because they want to live, and being on 0-hour contracts, you're working to exist.
I went through a phase of consistently 4 weeks of 4 hours a week, and my whole world really fell apart. I fell behind in my rent and I got evicted on rent arrears. That has made the council tell me that now I am now intentionally homeless. For me, it feels like the people that actually try and help themselves get nowhere. I've got no options now, and it's an emotional process because I'm not living with my son. I miss him like crazy, but there is nothing I can do about it.
Coming home, I wanna break down and cry. All my efforts seem to lead me to pain. I feel so small, working for nothing at all. Another tear down my weary face. Yeah, we've heard it all 1,000 times, but now we're drawing down the battle line. From the streets, the people rise. We rise together. We rise together.
I personally just feel like politics is all a bag of lies. What I do believe is that if you don't vote, there is no hope of change.
I used to vote Conservative, but I met Mr. Corbyn when he came to do a street walk with us. Just meeting him changed my mind, really, so this time I'm voting Labour, 100%.
I see in this country the gap between the poor and the wealthy increasing all the time. I see the NHS being run into the ground. And I see charities like this being necessary. It doesn't make sense to me to vote anything other than Labour.
We rise together. We rise together. We rise together.
Sound running.
Thank you. And action.
There's an election coming up, you might know that, and we all have our own personal axes to grind. Mine is what's going to happen to the NHS, not because of my undeniable status as a national fitness icon, but because once upon a time I used to be a nurse. And by the way, I'm sick of the way nurses get slagged off all the time in the press. I mean, come on, the vast majority of them are hard-working, committed, amazing human beings. Because to my mind, a decent, civilised society looks after its people when they're ill and doesn't present them with a bill at the end of it. But what I'm seeing now is, little by little, the NHS being pulled apart. By whom, you might ask? A clue. It's not the Labour Party. They started the whole thing. If you've tried to get an appointment with your doctor or been to an A&E recently, you'll know things are in a right mess. What's that mess all about? For a start, a ton of money wasted on a reorganisation so big you could see it from space, and so hard to understand you'd have to be Professor Stephen Hawking to get your head round it. I give you the Tory party. Let's be honest about it. If they get back in, the NHS as we know it wouldn't survive the next 5 years. Why? Because they're planning even more extreme cuts. We know that. They don't want to talk about it, but it's not hard to guess. What it boils down to is this. Do we want a government that'll back our NHS or not? I want to see our NHS make it to its 100th birthday and get its telegram from the Queen. Because that's what it is, by the way, the NHS. It's ours. It belongs to us all. We paid for it with our taxes, and we want to keep it safe in our hands, not theirs. And that's why I'm choosing Labour.
This election is a choice between the Tories' failing plan and Labour's better plan for working families. Britain succeeds when working people succeed. Vote Labour on Thursday, May the 7th.
It's important to remember that the UK, in a Brexit situation, is going to be the weaker negotiating party. And if we take into account how the US has negotiated similar agreements with other countries, such as the Korean trade agreement, Canada, Mexico, they have inevitably got what they wanted in those situations.
So although the British government might not want to concede on some of these points, what you're saying is that looking at recent agreements, the US pharmaceutical industry has got its way.
It certainly has, and it will certainly be lobbying hard to push its agenda in these agreements. They see an opportunity to prise open the market and actually remove some of the barriers that the NHS presents in terms of government regulating of prices. And they basically want to turn it into a system whereby it's the pharmaceutical companies who set the prices. What they want, in simple terms, is they want to have less competition so that they can control the market and the prices for longer. In my experience and looking at all the various trade agreements that the US has been involved in, you can pretty much bet that the issue of how drug pricing is done and how it's set in the UK will be on the table. The question is whether it will have the words NHS in the agreement. The likelihood is it will be a coded language.
Hello, my name is Steve Coogan. I'm in an ordinary caff, having an ordinary cup of tea because I'm an ordinary bloke.
Sorry, we couldn't do a skinny soy latte, Steve.
It's fine. Now, I was born in Manchester. I had a great childhood, and my parents taught me to respect hard work, honesty, and decency. We weren't rich, but we had more than enough to go around. And even though there were 6 of us, my parents decided to foster other children. Because for us, it wasn't just about looking after number one and to hell with everyone else. I've been lucky. I'm successful and quite comfortably off, but I've never forgotten the values they gave me. They taught me that politics matter. Now, a lot of people are very cynical about politics, but it's easy to be cynical. Cynicism doesn't change anything. Cynicism never built a school or a hospital. The great thing about the British people is that they have a sense of fairness. And when we see the Conservatives helping their rich friends avoid paying taxes, we know that's not fair, because it means that decent, hard-working people have to pay more. And if we don't think that's fair, we need to change it. And the way to change it is to vote Labour. The Labour Party gave this country the National Health Service. It gave us the minimum wage because Labour believes in helping all the people, not just the privileged few. I trust Labour with the NHS. I know they'll take care of it. And when the Conservatives say they will, I don't trust them. Imagine how we'll feel if we wake up on Friday with another 5 years of the Tories in Downing Street. More cuts, more privatisation and the dismantling of the NHS. But it doesn't have to be like that. Now, this election's on a knife edge. But if you want a government that believes in working families, in a better future for our kids, that stands up for everyone, then you can have it. But you need to go out and vote for it. So vote Labour this Thursday.
This election is a choice between the Tories' failing plan and Labour's better plan for working families. Labour understands that Britain only succeeds when working people succeed. Vote Labour on Thursday, May the 7th.
Okay, welcome back to the second part of this NEC Youth Rep Hustings. In this second half, we're going to open out the discussion a bit more. We're going to discuss 4 key topics which we think are relevant to young members. The first topic is trans rights. We'll then discuss campaigning in marginal seats. We'll then discuss education, and we will then discuss the NHS. So first off, trans rights. And we'll start with a question that has been sent in. This is how the question's worded. For a while now, there has been concerns raised by the trans community regarding certain members of the Labour Party and Shadow Cabinet. A lot of trans members don't feel as though they are entirely welcome within the party. Some MPs have failed to stand up for trans rights, as well as oppose trans abuses, all while our leader failed to sign a pledge condemning Labour MP support for transphobic groups. Lotto, that is the leader of the opposition's office, silence on transphobia is deafening. What is your stance on trans rights and GRA, that is the Gender Recognition Act reform? And if elected to the NEC, what will you do to support the trans community? So I can see Josh had his hand up first. So Josh, why don't you start us off with this one, please?
Right, thank you. This is a really important question, actually, because we have seen a rise in transphobia in the Labour Party, and especially from one of our own MPs, who I believe is it Rosie Duffield, the name of that MP? I think we should be condemning any transphobia in this party whatsoever. And, you know, if there's suspected transphobia, if we have the evidence of transphobic activity, that member should be suspended and we should push an investigation on straight away. I don't think that we can allow this to continue. We need to take immediate action on this because, you know, the trans community feel unsafe in our party, and we must be the party to champion equality and diversity, not the party to drive equality and diversity away.
Okay, thank you. I saw Tommy had his hand up next. Tommy, any comments?
So, as you can see, if you've clicked my Twitter feed at one point or another, I have taken a huge stance against transphobia. One of the things is a few weeks ago, I got an email from Labour Women's Declaration, which wants to see the women's groups in the Labour Party for sex-based, which is excluding trans women from accessing Labour women's groups. In total, there is, and I hate to say this, there's 4,630 signatures from members. One is the president of a socialist society. One is the chair of a union and a member of their NEC. 12 are Labour Party secretaries, 19 are chairs, 24 are councillors, 21 are Labour Party officers, and 24 are doctors. This should not be happening in a party that was designed for equality at all. And I want a strong rhetoric of suspending members straight away from the party, and then commencing an investigation into them, which may increase in permanent suspension / exclusion from the Labour Party.
Thank you. Theo, I believe you had your hand up.
I'd just like to say 2 quick things. One is I'm very happy about how much all the candidates in this election have been speaking out for trans rights and people in the trans community. I think also another thing, and I hope my fellow candidates agree with me on this, is also we also needed some discrimination of all kind. Is a big education and training on this, as unfortunately some people are just not aware that what they're saying is transphobic. Also, sadly, there's a sense of people tend to fear and shout out against things they don't understand. And I think we also need to try and introduce this in school and education in general. So I think if we can actually bring that forward, we might actually see less transphobia and phobias of all kind, which I think would be great.
Thank you. Tommy, I saw your hand again.
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment on Thea's message afterwards. And I do respect your comment, but I think a lot of people are educated on trans rights. I know there's education in some schools now and other things, but I think also being a compassionate human being, you don't say the things that some transphobic people say. And as I think all the candidates will agree with me, trans women are women and trans men are men.
Thank you. Gurpreet, I believe you're next.
I believe that transphobia has no right in our society, let alone our party, and any form of hate towards anybody, whether it be based on race, sex, religion, ethnicity, has no place anywhere in the world. And everybody deserves to be treated with respect. And each and every one of us has the right to express our thoughts or ideas or express our identification as we wish, without any fear of hate. And as human beings, like Tommy said, I completely agree. We must hold ourselves responsible to support each other, regardless of who we are. And it's always really heartbreaking to see people being targeted on social media and such because of who they are or who they identify as. And especially in the Labour Party, I think there needs to be a stronger stance on how the matter is dealt with. There needs to be a very rigorous process. It needs to be investigated, and if somebody complains, then there needs to be support in place for whoever's complained or whoever's been caught doing such things, and there needs to be a rigorous process in place.
Thank you. Just so you're aware, I think we'll continue the discussion on this subject up till 7:25, and then we'll have 10 minutes each on marginal seats, education and health, which will take us up to 5 to 8, so that we finish on time. So after Gurpreet, I've got Josh was wanting to speak.
Thanks, Ben. I just really want to say this. Trans rights are humans' rights, right? We are no different. We are all the same. And I just really want to make this pledge. I will not accept support from anyone that is transphobic. Right? I will not do it, because in my campaign, I am going to champion equality and diversity. I'm not going to take part in driving it out this party. I met on Wednesday with the Labour campaign for trans rights. I've asked all the other candidates during the break and gave them the information to do so. I met with them and want to create an action plan, because we need a definition for what is transphobia. And I just really want to say this. At the moment, we don't have a for certain definition of what is transphobia. But really, until we've got that definition, and until we got that definition in place, I want to say this. If you think that what you're saying could be hurtful to the trans community or to the LGBTQ community, don't say it, right? Because we are championing equality and diversity. I, for one, am proud of the diverse society that we live in.
Thank you. After Josh, I've got Leighton waiting to come in.
I would actually really agree with, I agree with every candidate in terms of transphobia is horrible and any form of hate is just not acceptable in the Labour Party. I don't want this to become another anti-Semitism where we were late on the ball and it's too late and it stains the party. I would actually also agree with Theo. I do think that education is key. I think the biggest way to combat ignorance and hatred is education. Education is the key to enlightening people. Some people, I'm not saying that every transphobic person just needs a little bit of education. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you educate people in the first place, people won't say anything. It's a fine line. Some people are just ignorant, and then you just need to educate them to make them see what they're saying is ignorant. That's all.
Thanks, Leighton. I've got Tommy is to speak next, and then I've got Josh. Maybe between Tommy and Josh, I'm going to pose a specific question to all of the candidates. But Tommy, you had the chance to speak first.
Okay. So I just want to mention I'm there with Joshua. I am rejecting support from the Socialist Society, who has the president who signed the Women's Labour Declaration, and the union that has signed the Women's Labour Declaration, as I think it's an inherent abuse of power within their party, because it's going to allow you, because it's going to allow those people to have a voice, and they shouldn't really have a voice. I also think that it's absolutely horrible that a chair of a union who's supposed to be there for their members is actually quite horrible. And I think especially a union is just, I don't agree with that at all. And If you want to know who I'm talking about, it's all on my Twitter timeline, Tommy for NEC.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to pose a specific question here. Leighton and Theo have both talked about education as the sort of the solution to combat bigotry, whereas I think Tommy raised a slightly different point in that some people, prominent people in the party, are educated on this issue and still hold transphobic views. A question for all five of you to answer here. In a case, a disciplinary case, where a member has said or done something transphobic, do you support keeping them in the party and trying to educate them on the subject, or do you support expelling them from the party? And Josh is the first one to answer on this.
So what I really want to say is, I'm going to start with the education point. I'm with Tommy on this. People hold their views, and yeah, it's good to raise awareness about this. It's good to call out discrimination and transphobia head on, which I'm sure we all do. I don't think that we ever see anything like that and let it lie. We all call it out. But education, I don't necessarily think that is the path forward. I don't think that's going to have the desired effect. What I think is going to have the desired effect is making sure that people know that, if they think that something's going to be hurtful to a certain community, then they don't say it at all. You don't need education to know that, what you're saying could be hurtful. Yeah, it's always good to speak with a member of a certain community, to see if that view that you hold could insult them, right? And I think it's important that we reach out to these communities where we're not sure what our views are on it, and we talk to them and we educate ourselves a bit more instead of education for us.
Thank you. So your answer to the question, would you support expulsions in proven cases, is a yes?
If it was, if the NEC had judged that person to be transphobic and had judged them, I would, for one, speak on behalf of, kicking them out the party.
Thank you. Next up is Theo. We've got Theo, then Gurpreet, then Leighton, then Tommy.
Before I answer the official question, I don't think education is the main way forward. But, don't forget, no one is, born racist. No one is born out of hate. They're accidentally taught it. They're accidentally influenced. On the issue of expulsion, so just echoing what Josh has just said, if they were proven to have been transphobic, also if it was, not just slipping up, perhaps not being aware of the right terms or something along that line, then yes, absolutely expulsion.
Okay, thank you. Gurpreet, your chance to answer now.
My view in all of this is that, yes, if something like this does happen, that person should be dealt with in a serious matter. But what I would tend to do first is sit down with that person and, I just ask, what is the reason Theo just said, that nobody is born racist, nobody is born with hate in their mind or their heart. So I'd sit down and ask, what is the reason, what's the origin, what's caused you to be like this, to cause suffering to someone else through your words. If that person is ready to make amends, ready to apologise for their actions and improve themselves in the future, then in all way, yes, keep in mind, try to keep in mind that yes, they can stay in the party. If not, then I'd support getting rid of that person, because there is no point, there is no place for someone like that amongst our party, or even in society in general. But yeah, that's what I would do.
Okay, thank you. Leighton, your chance to answer now.
Yeah, I just want to clarify first of all, when I say education, I don't mean of MPs, of people like that who should know better. I mean of new members. But if you just say, look, we should just draw the line. I mean, you should definitely just draw the line. Hate is hate, and if there's evidence of hatred, yes, I do support expulsions. Just to clarify, I do. I think if there's evidence of hate, then that is it. I just mean if you suppress the issue, then you're just going to get you could risk it getting worse. If you educate and just say, look, these are the terms, these are what you say, this is what is not socially acceptable. Sometimes people just get terminology wrong and they don't mean to cause offence, but it happens. Of course it does. I think if you suppress, you are gonna cause more problems. I think education is it's always been a key. It's the key against racism. It's the key against a lot of things. Education is the key against ignorance. So but just to clarify, I do support expulsions. Yes.
Thank you, Tommy.
I want to go on to say that yes, I do support expulsion of the members, but I also am kind of upset with some of the answers that I've heard right now, because some of the things, like saying, oh, they couldn't have mean it that way, oh, sometimes they get it wrong. If they had been told about it, then they could plea that, oh, I didn't know, and that shouldn't be allowed.
No, but you
Okay, thank
sorry,
you.
sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Is that the end of your comment, Tommy?
No, it's not the end of my comment.
Okay.
And I think the whole rhetoric of the Labour Party giving transphobes a platform is absolutely horrible. We are the party who's always fought for equality of all members. Me as an ally of the LGBT community, as you can see by the whole lot of rainbows behind me, and I can see a lot of people in our community are horrified by stuff that's coming out of it. And also I feel like places like Alliance LGBT shouldn't exist at all, and neither should any place that gives transphobes a platform, because it's not welcome in our in the 21st century. It's just not.
Okay, thank you. And a final, very brief comment from Josh before we move on to the next subject, please.
So just a brief comment from me. An apology would be good, but someone mentioned an apology would be good, but should I tell you what's more genuine than an apology? Not saying anything hurtful in the bloody first place.
Thank you. Right, we're now going to move on to the subject of marginal seats. Now, obviously, if Labour is to win an election, to win a majority rather at the next election, we need to win in those marginal seats. We lost a lot of marginal seats at the last election, and young members in particular are seen as very important in campaigning in marginal seats. And of course, they'll all have a vote. Marginal seats. Some young members may even wish to stand as candidates in marginal seats. So Tommy is going to start this one off.
Okay, so I think marginal seats, yes, a lot of them are won by young people. In a lot of marginal seats, there is loads of young people campaigning. I know that in my area, most of our campaign force is young members. I also feel like that we need a strong rhetoric on equality as well to win the next election. We need a strong rhetoric on equality and getting rid of all of the hateful people in our society. Well, not getting rid of them, but educating them on what should be done. I also think that we need to take a strong stance against hate crime, because hate crime is a huge thing, and a strong stance against knife crime and tighter controls on the sale of knives.
Thank you. Josh, you want to speak next.
Yeah, I just want to make this clear. I feel like I have got a bit of a better understanding when it comes to marginal seats, because I'm only one of two from as far as I'm aware, I'm only one of two candidates here from a marginal seat, and I'm the only person here from a marginal seat that got lost to the Conservative Party. So that I feel like I may have a better view of it, but if anyone is from marginal seat, or I'm not saying that you're not as educated, well, I'm just saying that coming from my experience, I think I've got a better view of it. Now, when it comes to marginal seats, what we need to do that we have really kind of lacked on, and I hate to say this as a member of the Labour Party, we need to be back there for our communities, right? And we need to get fighting for our communities, and we need to talk with our communities, and go with their needs, fight for what they need, because we fight together, and that is how we win elections. It's not about how we leave communities behind. It's about how we win these elections, and that is by fighting together. We're stronger together.
Thank you very much. Who would like to speak next? Leighton, you go ahead, mate.
Yeah, I think a phrase you hear quite often about Labour is the Labour Party is no longer for the working class, and I don't think that's I think that's because, like Josh was saying, I think people really need to feel like we are in their communities a bit more. We need to feel entrenched within their communities, and that does start with young people. If young people feel that part of their identity is that they are involved in the Labour Party, then that will entrench us in their communities, and making sure that we are listening to all points of view. We don't have to agree with them. There's a lot we do disagree with, and rightly so. But we do have listening is the key to entrenching yourself in the community. And also the weird focus on seats like impossible seats. Like there was a lot of focus on Boris Johnson's seat last election. That seemed kind of pointless to me. I mean, there were there was a big campaign to de-seat him, and there was a lot of money thrown towards that campaign. But that just seems like a bit of a pouring a mug into a pond in that sort of sense.
Thank you. I just like to throw another idea in here. I think I'm the only person here who's from the Northeast, and the Northeast previously seen as a very strong region for the Labour Party. I think at our peak of the 29 seats in the Northeast, I think we had 26, and the Lib Dems had 1 and the Tories had 2. So we were doing quite well. And of course, at the last election, part of the red wall in the Northeast, a lot of seats fell to the Conservatives. The seat that I was born in, grew up in, lived in for 20 years, went Tory for the first time in 100 years. And so did several other seats, including symbolically Sedgefield, which was previously Tony Blair's seat. And I think there's a great deal of concern in the Northeast about how we're going to win back these newly marginal seats that we previously viewed as safe seats. So I think this is that's why this is a very important thing for us to discuss. So Theo, you had a comment to make.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say I completely agree with what my fellow candidates have said. And also what you just raised, Ben, that unfortunately, because some seats were seen to be completely safe, they were almost ignored. There was almost no effort in maintaining a presence there and still reaching out to the community there. And then I agree with you, Josh, that because you're from a marginal seat, you'll have a different perspective on this. I mean, I personally am from Sevenoaks, which I think is the 17th most safest Conservative seat in the country.
Previously Michael Fallon's seat, I believe.
Yes, we did have that joyful person as our MP. But that does raise another point on the other end of the spectrum, which is you end up having some Labour members in safe seats of other parties feeling like they're just ignored, that they don't have a chance to give people a voice in their constituency. But then I know we can't help everyone in the country. We can't bring the reform we need if we don't focus on marginals, if we don't actually get into government. So I think, unfortunately, we need to actually have a bit of a balancing act on this. And we also need to actually talk to members from from the North, for example, or from other areas, what needs to be done to win back those seats, what are the issues that we need to talk about there.
Thank you. I think you've just said something important there. I know that in the previous hustings, the topic of electoral reform was discussed. I think it's a feature of the first past the post electoral system that all the political parties have to put a great deal of focus on the marginal seats and a great deal of focus on the swing voters in the marginal seats, and that sometimes leads to loyal voters in safe seats of any party feeling somewhat marginalised or ignored. So I think that's one thing for us to consider there. Next, we've got Gurpreet, and then after Gurpreet, we've got Josh, and after Josh, we've got Tommy.
Yes, I think I agree with a lot of what's been said, and especially Theo, what Theo's just said. I think what did go wrong for us as a party in those marginal areas was that we were under the perception that because we've been safe in these areas, in these seats for so long, that we would do all right, and we decided to divert our attention somewhere else, and that did not go well. So I think that the solution to that problem lies with, in those areas, listening to those people. What are their thoughts? What made them change alliances, in a sense, and what could have been done better? What could be done better in the future to win back those seats? So I think that's the most important thing, in my opinion.
Thank you, Gurpreet. And Josh, you next.
I just want to disagree with 2 points that were raised. The first point is that about Boris Johnson's seat. I just want to say that no constituency, no community is better than any others. You know, we are all equal. So, you know, whether we were putting a lot of money into getting Boris out, you know, I dream of getting Boris out, you know, but no, like they said that that, you know, we could have focused that on other places as well, you know, and injected that money elsewhere other than Boris Johnson's seat. We should have been injecting the same amount really everywhere, you know, and because no constituency is better than any others. And on the second point of electoral reform, you know, we need a referendum. We need a referendum on that. I'm sure in the last hustings, the viewers know that I spoke about having a presidential system on the ballot. I still remain on that position that that should be something looked into. We should look into everything. But right now, I think we need to come together as the Labour Party, be there for our communities, fight with our communities, support our communities, and take the Tories head on and get them out of office in 2024.
Thank you. I'm going to go Tommy, then Leighton, and then Theo, and then we are going to move on to our next topic, which is education. So Tommy, Leighton, then Theo, and then we're moving on. Tommy, fire away.
Hiya. So marginal seats, huge issue. But I think something can be achieved by the Labour Party, in all honesty. We lost the red wall in the Brexit election, as I like to call it. There is quite a good TikToker who I'm going to quote in this, who once said, voting blue to get Brexit through. A lot of people thought the Conservatives were the only party who could get Brexit through, when in honesty the Labour Party could have done it as well and probably have cracked a better deal. We are the party of the people, so we need to remind people of that and get the Conservatives out in 2024.
Thank you. Leighton?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify what I meant about the Boris Johnson seat. I've spoken to a few seats, a few groups, young Labour groups, and they said that a lot of money was actually funneled to the Boris Johnson seat rather than to focusing resources on seats like theirs that were a bit more easier to grab, and then they lost those seats. So what I meant was more that it's important that we actually think about what we are doing rather than just going, we should already throw in Boris Johnson. Of course we all do, you know, of course we do. It's just about being pragmatic and sensible, and then seats like that lost out because more resources were sent to one place than another. So yes, it is about looking at how to equalise resources. Yes.
Thank you. And final comment on this subject from Theo before we move on to education.
Yes, just a quick point. First of all, I do agree with Leighton about resources. But also, one thing is, if you're challenging people like Boris Johnson, especially with the way the electoral system is at the moment, there's also you also have a sort of the symbolic, you know, like the symbol of being able to bring down people's votes as well. There's also a sense of if you bring down a safe MP's vote low enough, they might change their views on certain things. They might think, okay, I need to appeal more to this side, which is also an important thing to think about when campaigning.
Thank you very much. We're now going to move on to the subject of education. Now, obviously, this has been a huge subject. It's a huge subject always, but it's been particularly hot in the last few days about exam results and things like that. We've got one of the questions we've got here that I'll just read out. As a 17-year-old, I face immense pressure to sit my exams with less teaching time due to COVID-19. Do you support scrapping exams? So that's one question for you all to consider, and we'll also broaden it out into just generally what are your views on the country's education policy, what should Labour's education policy be, and what should the ongoing position of our education policy be in the light of the pandemic. I'll go to Tommy first, then I'll go to Josh, and then I'll just go to whoever hand I see. So Tommy, fire away. You're still on mute there, Tommy.
I know my keyboard seems to be playing off. I can usually just press spacebar to unmute myself, but it didn't work. So as I said last time, I do support scrapping exams in a sense, but I support a two-tiered system. So
you support scrapping exams purely for the duration of the pandemic, or full stop?
Full stop.
Full stop. Thank you.
But I would propose a two-tier system, one where it can be based off coursework and no final exam, and one where it's just an exam. I think this is better as well towards home ed students like myself. I'm home educated. I have been home educated for the past 6 years. So I've took education in my own hands. I have to pay for all my own exams, which is absolutely monstrous because all high school children get them free if they're at school. So my only option is to do an exam because my coursework isn't done in the conventional way. But children in school then have the option to just do it based off coursework, and then that lightens the stress off themselves because they're judged on coursework. I think it's also good to have the two-tier system so people can say, I'm not that good at coursework, but I know I'm good at exams, so I can do the exam. Or I'm not that good at exams, but I know my coursework is going to be good, so they can do the coursework route. So that's what I would kind of propose.
Okay, thank you. I've got Josh, and then I've got Leighton.
Thanks,
Josh
Ben.
first.
From my understanding, I'm the only one of these candidates that has campaigned against academisation. You know, I campaigned against the academisation of my high school. It was set to happen in February 2020. I delayed it until June 2020. And I put up that fight, and I went and I battled and I dug in. I did the work. And, you know, this is a really, really passionate subject to me because I have seen what has happened to our education system. I went to a school that had declined because of underfunding and changes in leadership because of what the Tories have done to our education system. In this campaign, I have made one of my key pledges fighting for comprehensive education. And you know what? All these CEOs and of academy trusts and academies and free schools, let me just make this clear. I want academies and free schools brought back into public democratic control where they should be and where they are accountable, with good funding, which will be provided by the Labour government that cares. On the topic of exams, as I said in the last debate, I back scrapping exams full stop. You know, it's a good thing having good grades, right? It's a very good thing. But what if you're doing a job that you're not passionate about, and then you're not going to perform as well as someone that is passionate but hasn't got the grades? We should be doing this out of passion. Some of us aren't academics. Some of us get out there and do it for people that haven't got as good grades as others. And, you know, private schools as well, we shouldn't be saying, oh, well, we're going to give a better education to those who can afford it. We are equal and we are going to fight for comprehensive education.
Okay, thank you. I've got Leighton next.
On the topic of exams and scrapping exams, I think the most important thing is to listen to the students and to the teachers. If that's what they feel is necessary and that's what they feel is the right step, then that is to them. I personally, I'm not a very academic person either. I've always struggled with academia. I went to a university that was all about performance, and then you get there and they hit you with a lot of academia, and you're like, I'm not for this. I think also another thing about education is through my secondary school, like I said, I'm a musician. I saw the arts department get squeezed and squeezed and squeezed in favour of literally every other department, and it was really heartbreaking because it meant that the resources that we had were so limited. It was at the expense of other departments. It was being treated like it was the expendable department. You know, everything. The science department was getting loads of funding, the sports department was getting loads, and the music department was just getting shrunk and squeezed. And it was really heartbreaking because there was a lot of artistic people like me who felt that we were on the back foot, and we never really had performance opportunities in school. So that's just you know, I think funding and making sure that each department is also treated equally. Don't prioritise any department over the other because it means different things to different children, and different students.
Thanks very much. We've got Gurpreet, then we've got Theo, then back to Tommy, then back to Josh, and then I think we'll move on to our final subject. So Gurpreet, please go ahead.
So So in regards to the education system, past couple of past week or so, really, it's been really worrying personally for me as I'm a college student, even though I wasn't the one waiting for my A-level or GCSE results, but I can imagine what those young students have been going through. When I have a friend of mine who's a teacher, and when I approached him and asked him, how did results day go for your students? Did they do well? And he described it, and I'm going to quote. He said, "It is what it is." And those words to me echoed not only his anxiety, but it gave, sort of gave me a sense of defeat and disbelief in the system. And I was quite shocked. And I am someone who works for a private school. I don't believe in those institutions, and I have not heard of one student from that private institution who's been unfairly graded. And it's shocking to see that. And in terms of exams, I am partially for exams that should be scrapped, and that's for creative subjects. I think subjects such as art, music. I'm a woodworker myself, so I did product design for GCSE and A levels. For those types of subjects, it should be purely judged and graded on coursework and the pupil's ability to do that coursework. Whereas subjects such as English, maths, and science, they should be examined because they challenge pupils. And I think at the end of the day, it doesn't come down to exams, because when a student leaves sixth form or college or finishes his GCSEs, it comes down to the opportunities. If there are more opportunities available out there for students to get into work, such as apprenticeship schemes, then students will go for it. Whereas if there is nothing, then students are more likely to go for the uni option, and they feel stuck in a sense. So those are my views on the education system.
Thank you. Theo?
Well, I agree with Josh about general reform in education, especially towards academies. I also agree with Gurpreet about perhaps looking at changing the examination process in terms of subjects such as woodwork and art and music. Personally, as someone that struggled with exams, I also struggled with SPAG, or spelling, punctuation, and grammar. So I struggled with both aspects, examination and coursework. I think we should move more towards trying to have subjects such as English, like, balance out between coursework and examination. Mathematics, of course, is a bit harder to take away from examination. So I think basically, I think we need to have a more bigger discussion on this, because this is going to affect generation people to come.
Thank you. And very quickly now at the end, Tommy and Josh, and then we're going to move on to our final subject, which is the NHS. So Tommy?
Keeps on not working. So I think it's very important to mention, do not forget the home ed students. We are here, we are in the thousands. It's not just schools that will be affected by it, it's home ed students. A lot can't do conventional coursework, a lot thrive off exams. So we need a two-tier system. The two-tier system, in my opinion, is the best option. We also have a numerous amount of young people in the home ed community who need support from local councils, and we need to make that support available to them. And we also need to fund exams for all young people, not just the ones who are in conventional schools.
Okay, thank you. And last point from Josh.
First thing, I agree with Tommy and homeschooling. And number two, I am pledging to fight for the scrapping of tuition fees. We can't have students leaving education with astronomical debt.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to our final subject, which is the NHS. Obviously, the NHS has been under huge strain because we are in the middle of a pandemic. So Labour's health policy, what will you stand for? Let's hear your thoughts, guys. And I've got Josh first.
When we come to the topic of the NHS, it's very personal to me because my mum worked in the NHS. for many, many years in the admin teams. She worked in A&E and ICU. And you know what? If there's something that has brought up, if there's something that has exposed the huge underfunding and privatisation of our NHS, it's this pandemic. We have seen how weak our NHS is, that this Tory government has absolutely destroyed it, right? And, you know, we need to fund it properly. We need to give nurses and doctors and all healthcare staff a pay rise, unlike what Boris Johnson did. He did the complete opposite and didn't give them a pay rise and gave other people a pay rise. Time to do that for nurses and all healthcare workers. And third and final point on the scrapping of Public Health England in the middle of a pandemic just shows how incompetent, lazy, and quite frankly, clueless this Tory government is. We needed Public Health England, and he's just got rid of it to put a Tory MP's wife in charge of a new thing, and it's wrong. Our NHS is not for sale. It belongs to the British public, not to privateers.
Okay, thank you. I've got Tommy, and then after Tommy, I've got Leighton.
So, fun fact about me, I was born in one of the first NHS hospital in the United Kingdom, Park Hospital, which is now called Trafford General. I live just not too far away from it still now. And that was one of the first hospitals that faced cuts. You can see the Tories making clean and concise cuts to specificated parts of the NHS. They cut the A&E department of the first NHS hospital, the first hospital that was there for the people, who was there for them. And I'm going to say this again, I said this last time, we need positive socialist change, and we need a Clement Attlee type system from cradle to grave. We need to support our people.
Thank you very much. Leighton?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, my mum also works in the NHS, and I just wanted to say about her and the people I know she works with, they don't do it for the money. They don't do it because they know that they're going to be completely well off. They do it because they care and because they want to. You know, these are people that every day just work hard. I worked briefly with some of these people, and they're just, the resource is incredible with what they've got. They're just who they are. Their characters are amazing. So it's just it's incredible to see the characters. So it's upsetting to see the amount of cuts that's been going on. The fear of privatisation is imminent and looming, and it's been such a time to kind of really. Sorry, I know we want to be brief. It's just been such a time to really highlight the heroes that are everyday normal people who just do it because they want to, not because they're going to get rich from it.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Theo, and then I'm going to go to Gurpreet, and then it's nearly time for our closing statements. So, Theo.
I just like to say I completely agree with my fellow candidates. I mean, I too have had a family and friends working in the NHS. I too have had to use the NHS for various reasons. I agree with Leighton that, you know, people go to work in the NHS to help people. They're not in it for the money. But then, sadly, I've seen amazing NHS workers having to use food banks because they're not given enough, because they're having to pay for car parking when they're trying to save people's lives, trying to help people. So I think the whole system is a big mess and is in need of reform and investment.
Thank you very much. And Gurpreet for a final comment on the NHS, please.
I think the NHS is something that defines all of us, regardless of who we are. It defines us as a nation. It defines us as people. And you know, in my local community, it took 7 years for my local community to fight for the Charing Cross and Ewing Hospital because it faced heartless cuts. The children A&E ward had to close. The maternity ward had to close, and all without any justification. You know, there was no justification as to why children should suffer because of what the Tories want to do, and it was totally heartless. I mean, you know, Tories should be held accountable. And I think people within the NHS are just understaffed, underappreciated, and underfunded, and that needs to be addressed in a major way.
Thank you very much. We've now got a brief time for a closing statement from each of the candidates. We'll go in the original order, please. So that will be Theo, then Tommy, then Leighton, then Josh, then Gurpreet, and I will once again be timing these at 45 seconds each for a closing statement. So Theo, your 45 seconds begins now.
Well, I'm standing to be the NEC youth rep to try and end the factionalism in our party, to try and provide scrutiny, and to try and be the fighting voice for all young members. But I think also I'd just like to say that I'd be absolutely proud, honoured and happy to work alongside any of my fellow candidates standing. I think they're all amazing candidates. But I'm not just running to win, I'm running to try and make people's views more aware, to try and bring change to the party and to try and get us into government.
Thank you very much. Tommy, your 45 seconds begins now.
Okay, so first I'd like to thank everybody for watching. Second, I would like to invite anybody who's watching tonight who is interested in my campaign to go to tommyfornec.co.uk/vote to have a look at my campaign promises and instructions on how to nominate me. I'd also like to mention that it's absolutely wonderful that all of the candidates who have turned up tonight are here. And I'd also like to again mention I'm fighting for strong, positive socialist change, and we need to elect one of the youngest candidates so that the younger members are heard, not just the members who are older but still classed as young members.
Thank you. It's time. Leighton, your 45 seconds begins now.
As the Labour Party, we are literally at a tipping point where things are about to, our history is about to be written. And I think that is important that we elect somebody who feels that they are on the right side of to bring the Labour Party forward together, united, and represent rural communities, cities, art students, trans people, Jewish members, Muslim members, all members have to feel represented. And it is important to me that every single person has a direct line to the top, so they feel that they are equal and they feel that they are not, there's no hierarchy, it's just us as Labour members together.
Thank you very much. Josh, your 45 seconds begins now.
If you want a fighter on Labour's NEC to represent young members, if you want me to be your strong, clear, effective voice on Labour's NEC, then I'm asking you to please support me. Your support is valued so much, and it's an honour to have your support. So I'm asking you to please nominate me. And to really just end this closing statement, I want to say thank you to our NHS, who have been absolute heroes during this pandemic. You are the true stars of our nation.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Gurpreet, your closing statement. Your 45 seconds begins now.
I'm standing for positive change, not just within the party, but across the nation, to represent young people, to ensure that there are more young Labour groups in each CLP to represent the voice of young people, that the young Labour is more accessible through central platforms, training programmes, bringing a social element to young Labour, and working with our communities all across the nation to bring positive change. And just a huge thank you to everyone who's been involved, every candidate, and it's a great pleasure to meet you guys all.
Thank you very much. So that is the end of this Hustings. Thank you to everyone for watching. Thank you to all of the candidates for participating. It's been a pleasure for me to have hosted this and to have shared it. Yes, just please do share this video. Tell your friends that there's an election happening, and we hope for a lot more engagement before this election is over. So thanks for watching, and goodbye.